Nigel Farage, can you win a referendum without putting immigration at the front and centre of your campaign?
I don't think so, no. I mean, look, there are lots of important issues here. Clearly, the trade argument's very important. Access to markets, very important. All of that matters, but I thought the polling that was out this week from ICM was really instructive. It showed that if David Cameron got a deal on the free movement of people, that 52% of people would vote for us to stay inside the European Union. If he didn't, only 36% would vote for us to stay part of the European Union. So to me, you know, what this referendum is really all about is, are we governing our own country? Are we in control of our lives and our destiny? And a key part of that is, can we control our borders?
Ken Clarke today has accused you of exploiting the migrant crisis for the purposes of your referendum campaign. What do you say?
Well, I'd say to Mr. Ken Clarke that in April, I predicted this. You know, before the Great Flood came across the Mediterranean, I predicted that the EU's common asylum policy was so badly worded and drafted that it basically said that anybody that put foot on European soil would be allowed to stay. And predicting what is going to happen is not the same as trying to exploit something. But I do think there are genuine security fears that the British people have. Already, you know, we see ISIS using this crisis to get their jihadists into Europe, and that is something that I want my country to protect itself against.
Well, let's look at how we would be if we were. Suppose we were to vote to leave the EU. Can you give us an idea of what our relationship would be with the EU, in your mind? Are Norway, Switzerland, even Turkey, are they any guide?
Well, I mean, you know, Norway and Switzerland and Turkey and Mexico and quite a lot of other countries around the world have trade deals with the European Union. There are lots and lots of different models. I would want us to have our own bespoke trade deal with the European Union. I say that because, you know, we're not Norway, we're not Switzerland. We're actually the most important export market in the world for the European Union countries and Eurozone manufacturers. And, you know, I'm very much along the lines of Lord Digby Jones, the former Labour Trade Minister, who says, look, you know, this is so much in the interests of the German car industry that a simple free trade agreement is a very simple thing to do.
Well, I take it that you would still want us, if we were to come out, to have access to the single market. So let me just drill down a bit on Norway. Norway has access to the single market, but it still has to pay substantial fees to the EU. It has tariffs on its farm produce. It has to follow most EU rules, including the Working Time Directive. It's subject to the same freedom of movement of peoples as other EU members. So I take it that wouldn't be acceptable.
No. That is what Norway has opted to do.
Right.
And actually what's very interesting, the money that Norway pays, it doesn't pay to Brussels. It pays directly to some of the former communist countries because it chooses to do so. But equally, Norway controls her own fisheries. She's not bound in any way by foreign policy. So Norway's got a deal that suits Norway. It's also worth remembering that Norway sells to European Union markets about 75% of their overseas business. Now, I'm not talking about that. Having access to a market is not the same thing as being tied into free movement of people. This is the only part of the world in which we're told that trade must be linked to political union and must be linked to the free movement of peoples. Nowhere else on the rest of the globe does this system exist.
All right, so if it's not the Norwegian model, what about the Swiss model then? Now, Switzerland has partial access to the single market, but not services. Services are 78% of our GDP. It also has open borders with the EU. It has to follow many EU directives. So I would take it that the Swiss model would not be acceptable either.
Well, the problem, of course, in both Norway and Switzerland is whilst the people have repeatedly voted not to be part of the European Union, the political classes in those countries do everything they can to get them as close to the EU as possible. I do not want our relationship to be one of total free movement of people, and I certainly don't want it to be one where we're bound and prevented from making our own trade deals globally. You see Switzerland, for example. Yep, she signed up to some things that I don't think she should have done, but Switzerland has more free trade agreements across the globe than we do as members of the European Union. And I'm saying this, we are a market of 65 million people. We're the biggest export market in the world for those Eurozone manufacturers. We trade at a deficit. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's over £50 billion every year. We are in a fantastic position to have a bespoke British deal.
Okay, well, now, bespoke British deal. So it would seem, therefore, there's no precedent, no existing arrangement, in your view, that would cover British-EU relations post a leave vote. We'd have to take it on trust that you and others could negotiate an entirely new and satisfactory arrangement. We would be voting for an uncertain future, voting into the dark.
Well, actually, on D+1, we voted to leave the European Union. We're still members of the European Economic Area, and we have up to 2 years, and I hope much shorter, to change our relationship. But the day we vote to leave the European Union, we are still part of the European Economic Area. We still have complete free access to markets.
Which involves free movement of people.
Which does, and that is going to be part of our negotiating process. But what I'm saying to you is it's not a leap in the dark that actually stage one is we're still part of that European Economic Area, and from that position of strength, and knowing that we are a massive market for European companies, we've got the position to negotiate a proper deal.
Well, you say we have a position of strength, and clearly we'd be in a stronger position than Norway or Switzerland. But the EU only exports 2.5% of its GDP to the United Kingdom. We export 14% of our GDP to the European Union. They can afford to play hardball with us.
Let me tell you something. Those German car manufacturers, the last thing they will allow Chancellor Merkel to do is to make it difficult for them to sell their high-value products into the United Kingdom. We're stuck here, I think, with some arguments that, frankly, are out of date. 40 years ago, the idea that we would join something that was a tariff-free club was a very powerful, very potent argument. We're now living in a global economy where
not for services, Mr. Farage. There are still massive tariffs on services.
Well, how ironic.
And we are 78% a service economy.
How ironic that 30 years after the single market was started, we still do not have full access to the European market unhindered for our financial services such as insurance. So if 30 years we've been trying to complete this
well,
mythical
if we leave
single
it,
market.
even worse.
You cannot get away from the fact that the world has changed. That tariffs on manufactured goods have all but disappeared, and that where Britain finds itself now is the growth of our exports of goods and services is 2 to 1 bigger outside the European Union. So already our businesses are engaging with the rest of the world, and what I want us to do is to have a government that is able to go to India, that is able to go to countries like that and negotiate our own trade deals. And that way, actually what we do is we say no to political union and we say yes to the UK, thinking globally and not just in European terms.
Can I just look at the organisations that seem to be springing up to campaign to take us out of the EU? We've now got Vote Leave and we've got Leave.eu. It's all a bit reminiscent of Monty Python's It's People's Front of Judea and the Judean People's Front, isn't it?
No, I don't think it is. And by the way, I support both of them. I listened to what Vote Leave had to say last week. They're a Westminster-based group making business arguments, arguing, as I've done in this interview, for us to be free to make our own trade deals. That is of value. Leave.eu is an entirely different thing, aiming at a completely different audience. They are talking about the ability to control our country, the ability to control our borders, and they're reaching out to millions of ordinary people, employing business techniques, the likes of which have never been seen before in British politics, and they've signed up over 200,000 people in the first 8 weeks of their existence. These are two campaigns that are actually going for different market audiences, and I don't see them as contradictory. Actually, I see them as complementary.
Well, they may be complementary, but they're not complementary to each other, using a different word, complementary. Nigel Lawson, he heads up the Vote Leave group. He implies that your lot, Leave.eu, represent xenophobic voices. The man bankrolling Leave.eu says Vote Leave has no idea how to reach a wider audience and that one of its leading lights should be shot. I mean, you'd never know you were on the same side, would you?
Well, I mean, let's deal with Nigel Lawson first. I thought what he said was wholly unnecessary, damn rude. But despite that, I'd share a platform with him tomorrow if we can get together to get Britain out of the European Union. And as far as some of the comments that Aaron Banks has made, he's just not used to this backstabbing world of Westminster, and he thought that when he sent people emails, they wouldn't be leaked to national newspapers, and so he's got some lessons to learn as well. The really important point is that both of these campaigns are going in the same direction. One is appealing to a much nichier audience. The other is out there trying to reach the great British public by the million. And my view is that I will support both. I'm not interested in being partisan about this. And I'm really confident that at some point in time, they will all come together.
Well, do you accept that it's Vote Leave that is likely to get the official campaign designation from the Electoral Commission, because it is cross-party? It's got Tory, Labour, it's even got your only UKIP MP, Douglas Carswell. He belongs to that one. It's more likely to get the official seal of approval, is it not?
That's a very Westminster way of looking at it. And I don't think the Electoral Commission think the only measure is how many members of Parliament join a campaign. I suspect they'll be looking at how many other organisations are involved. And the advantage that Leave.eu have got at the moment is they've got virtually all of the Eurosceptic pressure groups are signed up to them. The advantage that Leave.eu have got is that they can reach people on the left of politics, and that is a much harder thing for Vote Leave to do, given just how closely linked
but
to
if
a number of Tory groups
if it is
are.
Vote Leave, would you consider rolling Leave.eu into it?
No,
for
I'm
one
not part.
major campaign.
No, please, can we please get this straight? I am not part of Leave.eu. I am encouraging Leave.eu to get out there and sign up millions of people. Just as I'm very pleased that Vote Leave has got some senior business figures making, some very sound business arguments. I'm not a member of anything. I'm the leader of UKIP. We're out there fighting the ground campaign already. I'll be up at the Sage Gateshead tomorrow night on the next part of the tour that I'm doing. I think both of these people have got something to offer.
If, against all your entreaties, this country votes to remain in the EU, would that mark the end of your political career?
Well, I've been trying for over 20 years to get this referendum. We've now got it. I think we've a better than sporting chance of winning it. And I have to say, I'm not even going to contemplate failure. I think that when you see tomorrow the In campaign launch, what you will see are a group of yesterday's men and big corporate businesses. And I think on our side of the argument, we've got the dynamic argument for being a self-governing democracy. We've got the global argument that the world is changing. And I genuinely think we can win this referendum.
Nigel Farage, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.